Well, now we'll do volume 2 of the Foundation to Oil painting. We've already shown you a whole plethora, a whole diversity of different subject matters and ways of using the oil paints. In this series I'm going to show you more defined beach scenes. We'll start with an English beach scene and work through some French and some very bright scenes, both in the studio and on plein air, which is rather fun. And then I'm going to move on to the gardens and flowers. So we'll have had landscape, we'll have had some portrait, we'll have some more portrait, we'll have gardens. We'll cover nearly every area that we can, even down to some abstract work. Right, we've got a bit of morning light coming onto here, and we're going to do a beach scene again. Now, I'm living near the coast. I think it would be applicable to do some more children running on our beach this last summer. Only got a few shots, and it's going to be very difficult these days. Going to be very careful these days taking such shots because people think you're up to strange things. So I always carry my artist cards with me just in case. And it's not always possible to ask permission, so it's very difficult. So in this case, I'm going to block out the faces of the young children on the beach. On the photographs. You won't recognise them as an impressionist painter anyway when I actually do the painting, so that won't matter. And this is the point, that I'm not recreating actual photographs of children that could be used in any nefarious way. What I'm actually doing is creating a scene naturally that we love, of people enjoying the beach, the air, the light, the colours, the sounds, the smells, and what we enjoy cleanly and directly most about such a scene. So let's get on with doing that, and where I'm going to start is with the sky. And again, a very broken colour sky, the joy of the colours, the joy of the painting. An impressionist scene, broken colour meaning putting one colour against another. In other words, if I want orange, I'll put yellow next to red in little strokes to make it seem much brighter rather than actually mixing the colours straight away. So as you've seen the pictures coming through now, the sort of paintings, the scenes I'm going to use, is actually a composite painting of two photographs of these figures coming in on one and these figures coming in on the other. And an important thing is, and the fun's going to be having the reflections later, so we're going to work sky, then down through sea, then all the reflections of the sky in the water, and then gradually build up the sand, and finally paint the figures. Now the figures are going to be painted very simply, and this is what I wanted to show you most of all, was this simple way of painting figures in this same method. The whole painting must be painted in the same way. We're not going to particularly pick out one particular thing. And the figures will also be painted impressionistically. In other words, we should be painting medium tones, then the darks, and then the highlights of the light catching across them to bring them out and give them light and form. Then here's my palette and brushes. I've just got my medium, small and larger filberts, nylons, and one small round, and then my normal palette of paints. Plenty of colour here. I'm going to be leaving with some nice bright colours this time. A lot of white on because I'm going to be tinting. I'm going to be using not a body colour, the white, and mixing those colours in to get this shiny vibrance of a fairly high key. So here we are, there are two photographs, and you can see how I've combined the two together. I think I prefer the sky in the lower one to the upper one, so there's not much in it. There's this lovely turquoise going on, and rather than just painting a block of colour across and having it flat, I'm going to work a lot more vibrance into this and change it. I'm the artist, I can change things as I want. So I shall work up from this turquoise through. That's going to be white, and as we did in one of the recent paintings of the wildfowl, it's going to be white with a little touch of lemon yellow and a little touch of green, the emerald green. Surprising what colours we're going to need. Then a touch of the cerulean blue. Let's put some more colour out soon, it's getting a little bit muddy. Let's see what we've got with that. So fairly light, so it's quite a green. Bring that all the way across this horizon line first of all. And again, we've got a white canvas, so it's going to look very dark at first, but it isn't going to be in the end. Because we do need to have these darker colours on, or darker than the whites and so on that are going to be within the beach. right the way across here, all the way across the horizon line. First of all, before I even start my broken colour, get a nice level horizon. Put it off there, but that won't matter. Really play with these colours a bit and put more green in, more blue in. Really want to go for this bluey green at first. Might seem a bit strange, but it will all hopefully work as I go on, because the green is going to play against the reds and the pinks in the sky, which I'm going to be using. There's so many permutations of colours that we could use here. So I'm just painting in bands of colour at the moment. Now I'm going to start feathering this colour into that colour. And this is a lovely technique to use. So that instead of blending, we're actually getting a broken colour technique coming down into here. I'm going to take that darker green and actually bring little strokes of it, as I was doing just now in a way, by dragging down from above into this colour below, to get this vibrance that we want. Little strokes then going one into another, bringing them right up and through, so that it all blends together, but the eye blends it. Now I'm going to go into more cerulean with the blue. A bit more terps into my mix. You see it's going to a more cerulean blue now. And I'm going to come right back across this in a moment, right back across it with some pinks. So it's not going to stay as it is now by any means at all. A little bit more white in that mix, a little bit lighter, as I go darker as I go up. All the way across again. You can see the green still coming into it from the brush. Right the way across like that. Fairly thick with the paint. Not too thin, this paint. I want to cover the white canvas, get into the bite of the canvas, and then once again let's just bring those colours one into another, this vibrance. Little tiny strokes, the tip of the brush, just tickling it in. Now this technique, very useful technique, can be used on plein air. It's a great one to use when you're actually out there, because it's so rapid. It just means seeing those colours. Now I'm taking that light blue again, I'm coming back across the original. You see how bright it becomes already. We've got a lovely vibrance, as if we've got the sunlight of this East Lincolnshire coast. When you do get light, that is. You get some beautiful lights here when it's not a strong, nasty, easterly and grey day. Then we've got different light altogether. There we go. And we get stronger still with the cerulean, and now you see this starts to become lighter as I put the darker colour on. A little bit more terps again just to get it flowing, right the way through to here again. I'm going to bring cloud over this later. I know I've said it, but I'll repeat to you so that you know it's not the finished article at all. And again, in we come again with the blending. Little strokes, just joining it up all the way along that edge and bringing some down into here again, so that we don't have a hard, sharp edge. Now we start to go warmer with the blue. I'm going to bring in some cobalt blue. This is my next warmest blue up. A little bit of terps again. I still want a touch of green even in that, so I'm putting a little tad of green into it, just a wee bit more. There's quite a green sky here, because I want to play it against the purples later, so we've got a much stronger, warmer green coming up there. A little bit more green to that still. Some more cobalt. We've got quite a strong cobalty green going on. All the way through here. Up to there. There we go again. It's quite dark now, up to here. And then I'm going to stop and bring a pink down shortly. A little bit more blue just up here. Right through and down into there a bit, because this is where my purpley colour is going to come in a moment. Right, and again the same here, we blend that down and through, one into another. So we should have a gentle blending of these colours all the way down through the sky. Now, clean my brush, and I've got to make quite a purpley pink. White again. Right next to the colour I've just been making, because I'm going to bring a little bit of it into it to just so it becomes apart. Take some purple. Right, here's the blue I've just been using with the greens. Now I'm mixing a white and a little bit of the purple in. And it wants to be quite dark because I'm going to have much lighter waves down below. A little touch of yellow, a little tiny touch of, don't make it too much, it's almost too much, so more white, bring it back again. More white, a little more touch of the purple again, that's better. Paint out all of this white now. It seems very dark, but that is because of the white canvas, not because our colour is wrong. I've been enhancing these colours on the photograph, on the computer, and playing around, merely to give myself more ideas, not to copy, but to give myself more ideas about the effects of lighter colour I can play with. And lots of permutations when you're playing with a computer program like that you can have, so many permutations. Right, that's got that colour all the way through there. Because of the white canvas it's nice and clean. Now I need to have broken colour coming up through into here. So I'll take that same colour and start to break it up through here and bring that blue into below as well. So that comes into this one, and the top one comes into the lower one, like that. Just beginning, hopefully, to see these beautiful effects that we can get. Now I want to make a lot more of that paint and make it come down into the sky itself, way down to here as well. Blend that through by putting these little strokes in. Don't want any particular piece showing too much. And a quite subtle, like a hazy warm day. And there's some of this cloud line coming all the way along here. So I'm going to just put these little fluffy clouds lightly using the edge of the brush, because otherwise they're going to blend too much. All the way along this horizon line here, just flicking them in. It's quite technical stuff. Now that's the beauty of these softer nylon brushes. If they're too soft, like watercolour brushes, I wouldn't be able to put this on at all, they just clog up. If they're too stiff, like a bristle brush, then you would find that it's blending too much. Now this colour comes all the way down through. Actually there's a lot more of it this end, so I'm going to have to really plaster on and cover over a lot more of this end here, right down through into the sea. Don't worry about that because I'm going to strip that up later, it's all there for me. And that actually comes up and is blending in with all these colours above here. These little pointillist strokes, these impressionist strokes, to link the whole thing together. And then the difference you see where I'm putting the tip of the brush now and actually leaving the clouds showing more, as to where I've actually been blending them in and doing a pointillist technique in. So here's the tip of the brush now coming out and coming up into the cloud effects, so that we leave those strokes showing. Not too much of a pattern, so be careful they don't remain the same. Now I've got to make a far more turquoise blue again to come back into this, I feel. Cerulean blue again, just the cerulean blue this time, and some white. Now it may be that if I don't get the turquoise enough for my needs, but I'm actually going to put a warmer blue in, but it isn't always the thing that you think is wrong that is wrong. It can be the thing next to it. So in this case you see the turquoise that I'm bringing down here is more blue, is more turquoise than the greeny paint around it. But the effect of that is to make the yellow behind seem more yellow. This is just what I'm trying to do, is to now bring down some of these darker areas between the clouds into here. That's all quite subtle stuff. So that's brought the blue back in again, quite strongly. A bit more blue again coming up into there now. Lighter turquoise blue, the cerulean blue. Now I'm going to take my cobalt again and just try a little of the warmer blue of the cobalt amongst this to start to make it look a bit more turquoise. A bit more of a turquoise feel to the greens, because this is a warmer blue. I could go right up to ultramarine and go very warm, but I'm not going to do that. I just want to get slightly warmer tints of this cobalt in here. Be careful with the brush strokes. I'm twisting my brush around occasionally because we don't want the brush strokes to become a pattern. It's easy to get little V-shapes or patterns going on in your paintwork and they start to look like lumps of grass in the sky or something, then we've got to keep changing the pattern making of the brush. I think we're far off there. Right, I'm going to make the pink a little warmer. I'm going to take a slightly, rather than purple, a slightly warmer colour, some rose, and bring that rose into here as well. Gradually building up as I go along, I have to look and see. So I'm making decisions, not always all beforehand, I'll make changes as I go along as well. So here we are, a little bit of stronger rose going into this slightly purpley pink, which again is going to give me a different effect again and make the warmer seem warmer again. So little tiny broken brush strokes now. I'm not blending as much as just putting these little tiny broken brush strokes with the end of the brush into this, deliberately bringing it right through the sky and into and through shapes of the clouds. I just want to push the greens a bit more. I know it seems strange to you that I should be putting so much green to a sky, but it will make the pinks seem so much pinker. Here we are, now I'm going to put a much deeper green into this sky. This is the emerald again, and it's almost, this time, almost pure emerald, so I'm going quite dark. It will make those blues seem so much bluer. So look at those little pieces of green. You've got to keep working on it. It's no good saying, oh, that'll do, or that's near. If you're not happy, don't leave it, come back in and work into it. Little strokes now again of green, emerald green coming in. And it changes the whole sky by this being so much stronger, giving more vibrance to the turquoises and the other blues around it. And this will make more sense when I get my darker colours in below it. Again, we're still fighting the white paint on the primer. Now we're getting that shimmering effect that I was after, and I think I'm about there with that sky. Right, time now is to come down to the sea here. I'm going to need some quite fine brush work here, but first of all I want to put a mauve across here, quite a very sort of light purple mauve into browns. So it comes through from a browny colour, greeny brown there to the mauve, and then into the lighter blues and turquoises reflecting off here. So let's make myself up first of all a mauvey brown. Take a little bit of burnt sienna, and a little bit of my rose. Let's test that. That gives me quite a nice deeper brown. Maybe a bit too deep in fact. Just go along that top edge with that. First of all, yeah, maybe a bit too deep, but we'll just give it a go. I'll have to just clean my brush up and tidy up those edges. Now, I still need that more purple colour, which I didn't get. A little bit of terps and a bit of the purple. Test that. That's more like it. A bit more white, because I need more body colour. Paint straight into there. That's better. Not colours you would expect at first. This is why we're really having to look, make changes. It gets a bit bluer, a bit lighter. And a bit more blue and green going into there later as well. So again, let's have some more of this purple being mixed up as we come down into here. Right down through around the figure a bit more. We're even starting to come down into the water already on this figure. Leave these, just go into the cut into the figures slightly, don't worry about that, just as they're just there to help us find the thing so we know where we are for the future. So wherever these colours are on our brush, put them in. We're working almost straight down now into our colours here, our blues and our greens in the sky, so we know where our lights and darks are going to be shortly. You can see how quickly we're establishing this painting, and if I was working out of doors how this could work, this technique. I threw in a little bit of cobalt into there then, deliberately, because I wanted to just test the cools against the warms again. The way that the waves are reflecting the sky, coming in from this warmer colour behind. So I'm going to adjust. I think I'd like to get some of the delicate colours into the background now, so I'm going to go down to only my smaller filberts and just find a little bit of this green, which I was using earlier, because that needs to start coming across here. Just feel this green that's going on, reflecting the sky in the background across the water here. Quite subtle changes in colour, they're important ones. There we go. And it goes a little bit warmer in the green, so I'm going to take a slightly warmer green, or yellowish sap green, and just come along this edge a bit more here. Alright, I think it's almost time to come back and start painting in some of the browns into it, but we'll just get a bit more of our light blues in. Ceruleans with the white. A lot of work just to fill these spaces in at first, just to get them all working. Of course we're going to be able to come back and put in lights and darks over each other as I go along. It's not going to just stay just like this. Right, so we're about ready to start on the brown colours now. We'll start with the lighter tones. I think we'll start with yellow ochre on that. A little bit of burnt sienna. And it wants cooling down a touch, so we'll take a little bit of purple and blue into it. When I say blue, I'll use the cerulean again. There we go, that's better. A bit more yellow in it later. Let's get started off with that. More yellow ochre, I think. A bit of lemon yellow as well. And a bit more white, just to get this covered up before we get rid of the white, before we really start laying on and finding the other colours. I'm going to have to work this beach backwards and forwards, in other words I'm going to have to bring it out and push it back and bring it out and push it back until I find just the right colours. Gradually blending and feathering edges in. Finding lost and found edges. Now lost and found edges where we've got an edge like that where it disappears, and then a found edge like this which is much harsher. So we'll lose it like that and blend it in, and make it harsher like that where it's required. Don't mind it blending with the blues at the moment a bit, because I'm going to have to get this textural effect with the water and the wet sand. And now you see this white disappearing. Makes a bit more sense. To totally paint out all the canvas, get rid of it, trying to get my values more correctly. This is another reason I like to paint on a coloured ground, is because you don't have to fight against this white all the time. Some of the depths into the water as well, let these sand bits reflect through here and there. Okay, now we move on to the figures, and what we want to do is look just how simply we can paint these figures in an impressionist style. And in fact, for a lot of painting, just to build up very loosely at first and then tighten up at the end. And that's the point, is to start off loosely and finish tight. If we start tight, we can't go loose. So if we start loosely, we can build up and stop when we want. So you can see here how I've just made the figures out of placing on the basic mid-tones first of all. Here the light blue, then working into the darker, finishing off with the highlights at the very end. So I've made the mid-greys here, put in the darks and then the mid-tones here, and then finish with the little highlights at the end. So let's move on now across this little figure, and we'll start painting there and then work our way across. It's here, she's got a dark head. Down the back of her hair. And then a dark jersey or some such thing on there. It's going round into her front here. Bit of dark down the front of the legs. We've almost got her now. It doesn't take much, it just takes the right angles, and at the front she's holding a towel. So we'll just take a little bit of cobalt blue. Put that in there. We've got the representation of a towel. Let it cool down the front. And a wee touch of burnt sienna. And we'll have the dark of her face. Now, we need a very light pink again, pink to orange. A very light orange at first. Just flick in back of the legs here. a bit more orange onto that. Yellow just here. And that same very light colour just showing in her neck there. All it takes, it's all we want. Now down to the old fella. Again, back to the dark colour first. Let's take that deep brown, the burnt sienna and a little ultramarine, and we'll try and find his body first here. Let's just work the darks out where they're coming. And actually it is very dark into there, so let's take some burnt sienna again, that deep blue, Prussian blue, and try and get that quite dark just here. So just by painting these shapes we should be able to get it around the front. Well, I've got these darks on my brush. Let's carry on to the child. Just here, and the back of that child's head. Cut in there a bit more in a minute. It's always going to have to be a little bit of adjustment because I haven't painted exactly up to things. Now let's look at the next girl on. You can almost get the movement just by doing that. We need to cut in places again, so let's come back to our bluey greens. And we'll start to get the areas we have to cut into. Right, across to the other figure. To get these darks established, and I know where I am in the drawing. Right, we know where she is. Now we come back to the granddad again. Right, let's look at his rather nice purple costume. Go with the dark purple first. Now take a bit of that light, add it to some white. Quick as that. While we're on purples, we'll do the feet, because his foot is also going to be in shadow just there, as is this one, and the side of his face here. Now that might seem strange to you to use a purple for a face, but when we're looking at shadow, then we're looking at cooler colours. Down here as well, on that side of the arm, quite a deep, cool purple, and right down here. And the same with the wee lad. Purple down that side. Really look for these colours. I'm talking about tidying up. I think now's the time to come in and do that. Right. Now we want some red. Yeah, for that nice bit of wetsuit he's wearing or whatever. Down into here. Stripe down the side there. I'm using a bit of rose now rather than cadmium red. I'm going to come on with some orange in just a moment. Right. Now then, the white, the cadmium orange that we had earlier on. Hopefully just down the front of the face here. Don't need to indicate eyes, nose and mouth, just give a feeling of it. Quick bit of impression of where the light is here. May tidy it up in a moment, but let's just get this right first of all. Now we want his arm. Take some almost pure cadmium orange. Come down that side. really catch the sunlight here. His arm coming down on the outside there. Even a little bit on the outside just there. Gradually building up a bit of cream, his beard and here around his face. But hopefully you see how the figures can be made, perhaps more simply than you at first thought. All sorts of bright colours all around here. Okay, let's move on from them for the moment. Okay, we'll go back to these girls. Maybe a little bit, I'm going to put some mauve into that in a minute as well. 1, 2, 3 fingers showing there. Fingers down the back of that leg. Before I put the purples in, let's establish the warmth of that leg. Redraw that in a minute. Got the other one coming through here. These stronger shadows will give us this idea of stronger sunlight. And I'll need to cut back in, so come back to our very light blues shapes, get the legs right. And in fact that light colour is coming quite across the top of the leg here. Our cadmium oranges again, and yellows. And here where that arm's much warmer. And hopefully you see how we can build up these figures just using little strokes of colour in the right places. Barely needs any detail at all. And we start with a little bit of splashes where we see them coming through. They've got a little bit of wet on their feet. And that'll be showing as well on their toes. And there we have the basics of the figures, just flicked in a few strokes, nice and lively, and we'll work on those a fraction later. Next we need to be bringing up these lighter, brighter colours behind, as I was just doing in a way. So I'll take some more of my cream, so lemon yellow and white, and a little touch of the blue. Plenty more white in it because it wants to be really quite light. We'll look at where that all these splashes and things come here. I'm going to be doing a lot more pure whites into here as well. Because we want to get these brightness and movement of these figures. You can see now that these lively strokes will start to work. And we need to reflect these figures as well, as this one will be here. These warms will really make the blues come out and really make the cools sing more. And I want to find these cadmium orange, and it starts to adjust because then it makes the areas that were warm before look cooler because this is even warmer. Splash is cool or warm as well, that matters. Notice the fact that I'm doing not just vertical strokes or horizontal strokes, I'm using both to get the feeling of the lights and darks and reflections amongst this. Really keep working at it until you're happy. Don't give in. Now I've got to start looking at these distant wind turbines, which are a part of this particular scene. Not that they're particularly beautiful, but in this case I do want them in because they are significant. We'll just indicate them again. We're not going to put in loads of exact copies of windmill or wind turbine sails. Or what we're going to do is indicate. Now we need to go in with a slightly darker colour. In this case it's going to be a little bit of, I think, ultramarine and a wee touch of the purple. So a wee touch of ultramarine, a little bit of purple, and away we go. I have a feeling we should use a little bit more green into them too in places that will link a little bit stronger green than the green that's there, because these shapes are ghosting in the distance here. I think it makes quite a difference because it's stronger than the green of the sky. I want it to detract too much from the figures on the beach, which is doing just slightly. Now I think we still need more warmth in the sand, so I'm going to take my medium filbert again and come back and look at a little bit of cadmium orange going across the surface of some of this sand. Let's just see what happens, shall we? Make it too orange, but wow, yes, it certainly does have quite an interesting effect, doesn't it? Look how now the sunlight's starting to catch the surface of things in the sand, which is what we're after. Dancing sunlight and dancing children. It's so sad that in this time and age we've got so many worries about unnatural things and people who've affected children's lives negatively. But there are so many wonderful people and parents who are not, and it's so worrying that natural instincts and kind deeds and thoughts can be misconstrued, and that people, fathers who are just giving their children a normal hug and a kiss, can be looked at as if it's something unnatural, which it shouldn't be, and it never was. And it's not a Mediterranean light that I'm painting now. I'm deliberately going for the cool sunlight of the English coast of around Mablethorpe, around here, deliberately trying to find that. And I don't think I'm far off now. We've got quite a lot of these colours in and they're working. Well, there we are. I'm going to call that finished. Loose, lively, an impression of the beach, feeling of movement, and I've shown you how I go about doing that in this particular way, and we can finish as tight as we want. Here I am back in Provence, 10 years further on. So I've lived in France now about 6 years, and we've just returned to the Prede, in Provence, where I actually created one of my first ever films. About 12 years ago now, we came to this part of France and painted and did a watercolour, a pastel, and this time I've come and done 2 big oils, and I'm going to do an oil later in the studio. So it's rather fun to come back to some of the same places and produce some artwork, and perhaps you may see some differences in the art, perhaps you may see some improvement or changes, but here we are in this lovely place, and I'm going to paint a sea scene for you and a vineyard scene, and then when I return home we'll do a studio piece of some boats in the harbour. So let me show you again around the area, some new places this time, as well as returning to some 1 or 2 older places that we visited before, and you can share with me the cuisine of the area and some of the culture, and look at some of the nightlife and the surrounding countryside. Let's go then and enjoy. Here up in the hills amongst the cork oak, the lovely texture of the bark of the cork. Well, today we've got a lovely vineyard to paint at, with a very old derelict building behind it, architectural interest, which I'm going to try and incorporate. This is going to be an example of where you move things around, because I don't want all of this expanse of ground in the foreground, so I'm going to bring this lovely arch from the right further into our painting and move things around a bit to make the composition I want. I'm only going to need 3 brushes for this, nylon flats of 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, and a nice round point brush. Then I'm going to add some cerulean at the base, at the horizon there, and add a little bit more emerald into that cerulean to make it slightly more green. Then work my way up through the cobalt and into the ultramarine. Once I've blended those bands of colours, I take a little viridian green and add those in small broken strokes into the sky, and blend the whole thing together, dragging those downwards gradually and making one broken colour effect. Continuing down from the sky into the horizon with warmer blues, ultramarines and some purples, and then down to my trees in the distance. There I mix yellow ochre and some cerulean blue to give a warm green, and can change the greens by adding either the warmer blues or the cooler blues. And I can also change it by adding the different yellows as well. I could add the cerulean to the lemon yellow, and the cerulean or the ultramarine to the chrome yellow. Once I've established all my mid-tones in the greens, I can start to add the lighter and the darker ones and become much more detailed. Base colour for the ground is simply yellow ochre and white. Then I start to add more burnt sienna into that to make it warmer in places, and the various greens and light yellows amongst those to give a more sunny effect. To get the effects of bright sunlight and heat, you need to have very strong lights and darks, so you want very strong shadows and then some very light bright areas amongst those to give this effect of the hot summer Provence sun. Not only can we get the effects of the heat of the day by using light and dark tones, we can also use our colour circle, and you'll see here that I'm using the warms against cools, the very deep ultramarine blues against cadmium reds and oranges, and also the purples against the yellows, to give the opposites in the colour circle and vibrancy of colour. I do have 3 man-made greens on my palette, that's Viridian, Sap and Emerald, and I can adjust those accordingly as well. So with the use of the various yellows and the blues, you have a huge variety of greens. But do remember that blues are also very, very useful amongst those greens. Not only can we have warm and cools of any colour, so we can have a very blue green or a very brown green, but we can also use the cerulean blues and so on, which are very greeny blues. The turquoisey blues are very green because they've got yellow in them. So you have to look at the reflection of light on leaves. When you have shiny vine leaves, you're going to have very light turquoisey acidic leaves shining the light. And then underneath the vines, these very warm dark shadows of the greens, where you might even be using raw umber and a little blue to make a very dark warm green. Once again, my old rule of starting loose and finishing up as tight as one wishes. That way you are in control.
Right.
Down here especially, you know, I could paint these as pot boilers and totally enjoy myself. Same time, being in the right place. I tend to follow the usual rule of the Impressionists and do not use pure black. I make my own blacks using Prussian blue or ultramarine, and then adding either burnt sienna or raw or burnt umber to that, which gives me a lovely dark. As you see, painting in this very loose way, at the very end of the work I'm able to put in those really pure vibrant colours from the palette, the pure cadmium reds and oranges and purples and blues. There we are then, just needs a signature and I'm finished. Really enjoyed doing it. This close-up shows just how the painting is constructed, painting in and blocking in the background and then gradually working it up by all of the different highlights. And after all that thirsty work, here's some of the wine from that very vineyard. We had some later at the restaurant. Wonderful stuff. But on this particular evening we put together our own barbecue in the back garden of my friend in Provence. The sound of the cicadas in the background sounding almost Spanish. Wonderful atmosphere and a great time. And for my final painting on plein air in this section, we returned to the bay that I'd painted 10 years earlier. And I'll show you a piece of film that shows the beach now, and here we are, the bay at this present moment, and then just after this, the bay as it was those 10 years ago, and then a short section of film showing the pastel that I did then. So you see there's been very little change in those 10 years. Isn't it wonderful that a place can remain as nice as this? And you can also see why it's called the Côte d'Azur, the coast of the azure colour. These wonderful cerulines that we're now going to play with and build up. Well, here's the scene we're going to paint, and as you can see I'm going to try and take in most of the bay from the far left-hand corner and the point in the curve right round to behind me to the right, so it's quite a difficult composition. The view I've set up with a nice chunky studio easel and my little deck chair, my paints to my right, so I'm pretty comfortable on this one. I've pre-primed my canvas with Prussian blue and black, and then I've drawn the composition in with a white watercolour pencil. This means that I can easily wipe it out if I make a mistake. As usual, I start off on the horizon, in this case using cerulean white and little rose because I want a more purple effect in the distance to get the heat haze. Then working my way up to the ceruleans, adding a little emerald, gradually through to my cobalt into my ultramarine, and even a little alizarin crimson into the ultramarine at the top of the sky. At first the sea will reflect these same colours coming down in bands from the horizon, but as I come further down I'm gradually adding more and more green and warm greens into this, and eventually we come right down to the beach edge itself, where I'm going to be hitting purples and the warm browns and yellow ochres. This is where my technique comes very much into its own, because as you can see I'm painting very rapidly. I'm comparing colours rapidly one to another and very loosely painting them on and making judgments quickly as the light changes. And with the tide going backwards and forwards, with the waves constantly coming in and changing, you have to be quite versatile. And so, like the vineyard, once again I've established all my midtones you can see here, with some of the dark shining through in the background. So now I'm going to continue into the landscape in the distance, use the midtones there, and then add the dark and the light highlights of light shining across the buildings and onto the cliffs. But I am still pushing for these pure colours. I am still working the pure blues and the colours directly from my palette into the background here. Once the background's established, then I can come down back to the sea again, and we can start looking at the darks and highlights in the sea, starting to paint the tips of the waves, little creams and pink ripples as they come across, the sparkles on the water, and we can play these darks and lights against each other as well as those colours in the colour circle, as on the beach where I've got the purple against the yellows and so on. My short-term memory is not that brilliant, so I have to keep looking backwards and forwards, looking at the edge of a wave, looking at how the colours change as it starts to collapse and fall over, how the sparkles happen in the painting. I have to keep reassessing the colours one to another, and as the clouds move and the light changes also. One asset that can be of great use, of course, is a camera. Of course, not the old-fashioned film cameras, but the new digital cameras. This is because one can look immediately into the back of many of them and see the photograph you've just taken. Let's do that. Shortly you'll see on the film some children starting to play in front of me, ideal subject matter for my painting. It will also give the painting scale. To have a child in the foreground will show how large the sea is behind. So I have my camera at the ready, and here are a few shots I took of the children as they're playing in front of my canvas. In fact, the mum was very interested later and came to see the painting finished and asked for the website details so that she could look at the painting later and show her friends, which I was only too pleased to do. The way to paint the figures is to paint it in exactly the same way as you've just been painting the rest of the picture. Don't stop and try and dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Don't try and be pedantic. Treat the figures as loosely as the rest of the painting. Put the right colours in the right shapes in the right places and the figure will just appear. So when looking at the back of the camera, as with looking at a photograph, paint in exactly the same way as you would out of doors and the whole thing will stick together. If you try and treat the figure differently, as I've seen people do, some amateurs do in the past, or the dog that's next to them, it will stand up like a sore thumb. It will look totally unnatural. Everything is apart one to another. The light is the same across all of the objects, so treat it with the same style. In fact, I'll show you in my next painting in this film, where I'm painting in the studio, but again, paint very loosely, as if I was painting in plein air, and it will give you that wonderful vibrancy and effect of being out of doors. I'll try to. There we go. And some of the cloud effects that we have swirling around here are going to be in this pink. We're going to have some deeper blues as well. There's lovely clouds swirling around, so I'm just going to loosely paint them on. Now I can afford to come through the mask slightly because I know where they are, and that's what I've painted them there for, just so I understand. We don't want to be trying to smooth in and paint really tidy, neat clouds. We're just the effects that we need here. So a little bit of that ultramarine and the cerulean, the distant hills. Warm blue coming through there. Below that it will become much more turquoise, because below that we start to add some more yellow into it to make a more turquoisey blue. You see these lovely colours we can get so quickly, but of course you have to have them to hand to start with. It's no good just having one blue. You cannot mix a lot of blues. You know, you're going to need some cerulean, you're going to need some Prussian, you're going to need some cobalt. You can get away with those blues. That's all you need. Cerulean blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue and Prussian blue. And those will do you. Take some terps and just quickly flick in and leave a dark line behind, just so I know where I've established where things are there. Now this sea area here, as I said to you, is becoming, it's a mixture. We've got some darker cobalt areas in there, and we've got some ceruleans. So I'm just going to again use up some of my deeper colours first, just to establish, just to get rid of this black board. There's nothing worse than having all the white or whatever board standing in your way. You cannot see the wood for the trees. You don't need to change brushes for this. You can cut down these lines, make them thinner later. Let's just get the colour there, get it vibrating one to another. I'll come back to the sea in a minute, but while I've got the colour on my brush, we'll use it. So that one goes there, this is the same behind here. Lovely med blues, and a bit lighter there. I've got it on the brush, use it. That light colour actually is over here as well, that pink. Is in fact, I need to get that in here while it's on my brush. Get this covered. Get rid of this black. Lovely deep blues that are lurking behind this. And we can start drawing them back into the boat a bit where they are as well here. This one's alright just to get started off, but so let's go now and take some chrome yellow and add that to that, which will be a much stronger. Some chrome yellow in with the cobalt, and let's look at the sort of colours we get down here. You see, much darker. We could add some warmer colours into that yet still, I'm sure. Bring that right up around the boats there, into here. Yep. Okay, take some of that white, mix it in there. Have a look. Not far out actually. Maybe a little more chrome in there. And a little yellow ochre. There we are, that's the colour we want. Right, so that's coming down all the way down there. Lovely, lovely bright sunny Mediterranean. South of France, Provence, Côte d'Azur. Here, the other colours up there as well. Differences from two little shapes like that can make. Now, this planking here, how narrow am I going to take it? I don't remember to go further than that, but plenty of terps, and let's establish this decking that comes all the way down here. Do that later and really make that vibrate a bit more. Right, I think we need to mix up some new colour. I'll clean the palette up before we carry on. Well, we have a new palette of paints, so let's be getting on again. We'll work up these blues now. Taking them around now. Now that blue looks like the cerulean again with some white. It's fresh paint. It's nice to use the old stuff up, but it was a bit too far gone that. Now let's test that. Actually a touch warmer, so I'm going to just add a little bit of, there we go, a little bit of cobalt to that just to bring it up a bit, and that can be a bit lighter yet. Right. Still got some darkening around these corners, so I'll just take some of the cobalt again and come down to that shadow. See if I can paint that down here neatly enough without resting my hand on anything. It's a light coloured rope, which I shouldn't really put in till the end, but I'll just indicate it now. It comes off over here. Bow. Hangs through the boat there. Now we come back with the stronger yellow underneath. We layer some paint on now. To my thinner lines across here, just to indicate some of these planks. Some of them might have to be a bit greener. I should know how to do that with the tip of the brush without it making that much mess. I should be able to just flick on a fine line or two down here. And now we start playing with these very light highlights around the place, which will make the painting sparkle with sunlight as it catches all of these little areas. Right, let's get finishing off all these lovely darks down to the depths of the boat here. I'll take my Prussian again, like very, very deep Prussian. Add some deep purple to it and a touch of burnt sienna. Give myself a really lovely dark for in here. And then let's get in there with it. Can we just show the roundness of this all by showing the envelope there, and that'll be the side as well. There we go. Off the board there, I think. Let's add some yellow ochre to that burnt sienna and just see what we get coming down there. Makes it lovely, pure, bright. This is cadmium orange and white and a little bit of the chrome yellow now. Really pick up on these old planks. Right down through to there. I'll take the rigger brush in a minute because we need to do some of this finer rigging. But just for the moment, not quite yet. Let's just play a little more with these darks and ripple shapes here in the water. Just using the terps to blend the colours through a bit now. across here. Will do for doing some of these medium stanchions, but not for a lot else. Okay, this brush should do the job. I'll put some paint on it and see what we think. Now then, I'll go from here. Painting a bit more red on there in a moment. To the same side here. Join my line exactly. I'm going to paint this one line down to hit it exactly in the right place. Go. Tweak them in.
Apporte-lui l'écho des beaux jours. Dans le soir en émoi, va lui chanter pour moi la chanson de mon rêve. Guitare d'amour.
Okay, this is our final piece in this series of painting figures amongst flowers. This one this time. Again, a last one of Liz. We've done 3 others, a larger painting, but this time I want to show you how to simplify these sorts of shapes, how we can make the different background lights, the effects of light with all these different greens, warms and cools. First, just working up them as block shapes and edges one to another and blending one into another, and then putting on the light flowers and all the bright colours afterwards. We'll just leave some of the basic areas and put in some colour underneath as an undertone, but what I want to do is just show you how simply we can make such a complicated picture by doing the block shapes one into another and get an effect of light, and then of course the lady into that. I'm going to use acrylics first of all, overall, and then finish with the oils at the end. Remembering that we can put oils over acrylics, but we can't put acrylics over oil. So we'll start with the acrylics, fast drying. Another very good way to work outdoors as well, because you can work very quickly, get it all dry, and then put your final details on with the oils. I shouldn't need a lot of tools and equipment. These filberts will do me, and there's 1 or 2 small flats there. And a simple old chip tray for mixing in, plastic, and a basic set of acrylics. Nothing fancy, just all of these colours will do me fine. I like to start off with my mid-tones and work towards my lightest, so I'll be working from these mid-tones like this through to my lightest ones at the end and the darkest ones at the end. Start with my biggest brush. It's the usual rule is to start with the biggest and finish with the smallest. And I want to look at these variety of blues and blue-greens and just make an effect of light, working one colour into another. So our first colours are going to be yellow and blue, and of course with all the varieties of blues that we've got, we can well afford to make a lot of different greens with that. Let's just test one out. There's a nice mid-green going in up here. It's going in between these arches. I'm going to stain the canvas at first. Just rubbing the paint in. It's not very thick paint, this acrylic, so it'll give me a nice staining of the canvas just to start off with. Just to get the lovely effect of light. And we're going to work into this paint while it's still wet. Acrylics dry very quickly, so I want to work very quickly as well before this paint has a chance to dry off, just to get the effects of light. Take a blue into that green. And you see how we can start to get the effect of these different little bits of leaf underneath by stippling in, by stroking in one colour into another. I'm going to leave some little bits of white here and there just to remind myself of where the drawing is for some of the objects. Otherwise I'll be lost later. I'll just paint over my drawing and that'd be a bit silly. No point in that. Same here. Just an effect of light and texturing to give the feeling of all this mass leaf behind here first of all. I'll work into this over and over again. And as the colour changes, so I add different blues to get different effects of light. Leave some of these flower shapes behind just so that I know where my drawing is for those. Let's get these lovely effects of the different shadows of the greens going on behind. Put more yellow into that again to make a green again. But a variety of different greens, as you can see. Just scumble all that in because I've got a lot of yellow to be left in there, but give me a background colour. So I'm showing you simple ways to paint complicated scenes. At least that's what I'm trying to do. And by adding different yellows and different blues we can get these effects. So I started off with a lemon yellow, and I'm using three different blues here, a cobalt, an ultramarine and a cerulean. Now I'm just mixing a little bit of yellow ochre, which is much warmer, with one of those blues, with the cerulean in fact, to give me a much warmer shadow, bluey green shadow. I don't need much water with the paint because the paint's fairly thin anyway. Now for those of you who know the classical terms, you'll know of chiaroscuro, which is light and dark, which Rembrandt used a lot. Well, we're going to be using a little bit of it in here, where we have the very light edges against the dark edges and the sunlight reflecting. Just giving an impression of shapes and objects and a feeling of things going on behind. We're not going to paint exactly at this stage, we're just putting in this effect of light. And you start to see the difference between these warm and cool greens, and how we get that effect of light. Atmosphere, mood and movement. Just building this up gradually. Putting one colour into another and over another to give this illusion of detail. And the cools into the warms, and the warms into the cools, and the roughs next to the smooths, and the lights next to the darks. All these bits of armoury we've got, all of these techniques we've got to control to get the effects we want. Little brush strokes to give the feelings of textural leaves and background. Dabbing it on, drawing it in. building it up layer over layer, because these acrylics are cheaper acrylics, so they're fairly transparent, which means I can build up one layer over another. All the bright colours, I keep saying it, but all the bright colours are going on later. I haven't got to worry yet. This is just some underpainting, an effect of light. It's building up from the mid-tones, gradually getting darker and darker. And some lovely colours happening in here. I'll just find this light. You just begin to see the lovely effects of texture we can get just with blobs of paint and building this up. Now we're working from the mid-tones into the darks and out towards the lights gradually. Starting to put in some of these lighter yellows here, the highlights of the sunlight catching the leaf behind. Not painting any detail, just giving an illusion of it. These are still fairly cool greens that I'm putting on at the moment. You see the depth that just is starting to come now into this painting, even before we paint any detail of the figure. As we've gone darker, do the same with some of these deeper, richer colours that are amongst the flowers here. Just start to show those lovely deep purples that are glowing amongst these sweet williams. So we've done our greens and blues, and now we're starting to work some of the slightly warmer. Now while I have colours on my brush that can do with going into here, let's start to paint in some of the underpainting of the figure and the dress. This warm grey will do for the moment, just to get some of the patterning into here. I'm not going to start painting lots of detail on. All I want at the moment is to get rid of this white canvas and find the tones to get this effect of light. A moment in the time, and then we will work in the details. Let's get some sort of flesh tone onto there just to get rid of that white. Don't have to be too careful at this stage, just blocking in to get rid of the white canvas really. To tidy this drawing up a bit later, it's important. But for the moment, just get the flesh tones into here. So you can see how we can build up these undertones. The underpainting to it. I've done enough with the basic underpainting now, so we leave the acrylics at this stage to go onto it with oils later. I could have carried on working it up with acrylics, but I think I'd like to go onto the stronger colours of the oils. Well, I've now got the oil paint set out because we're going to move on to the overpainting. Now we've done the underpainting in acrylic, and now we're going to do the overpainting, the final work with these oils. And here's the palette that I normally use, and I'll show you more clearly now the palette on screen, so you can see the amount of paints that I keep, and I can paint almost everything with. Quite often when we come back to a painting, having been away for a while, we can see things that are wrong, and immediately I can see a problem here with the drawing of the face. So I want to set that up straight away. Take a small brush and just get my oils going. The nose needs lengthening out a little bit, and it wants to be a little bit higher and more coming out just a fraction as well. So I'm going to take a little bit of yellow ochre and white for the moment, and tiniest touch of rose, just to find once again where this should be here, and I think we should be out there somewhere actually. That head, the hair should be a little bit higher here, let's get that right, perhaps out there, with the light shining on it, coming down and round into there. Little tiny touch of taps onto my brush just to get it fluid again. So we're finding that light area there, colour coming out with the oils. You see how easily the oil goes over the acrylics, and you can thin it down and almost use it like a glaze as well if you want to. I'm using this paint not fat on lean at the moment because the acrylics are already dry, but fairly thinly just to get started. That's up to there somewhere, then our forehead comes down here. The eye there, and then the nose actually has come out a little bit further up, probably a little bit more of an angle, probably more there I think, and inwards just slightly there. It's very important, these little bits of drawing a profile like this is absolutely vital, and then the lightness coming down on her chin, and that has changed that bit of drawing quite dramatically. You see the changes I'm making quite dramatically with this colour already. Really pushing the colours now. That red is, well, I've got it on my brush, is also up here. It's a purple actually. Down into there. Now I need to mix that cooler flesh tone, which is very similar to the one that was on with the acrylic. Slightly more blue into it. There we go, that's found her back again, that's brought her back again a bit. Push the colour a bit more now again. Just coming out from her nose here, a little bit darker there with the blue, which will help the reds to show out even more. And then we'll find her mouth, which has both the purple and the blue in it. And we've got the warmth then, with the nose coming down. Still a fraction lower than I thought, maybe. Just a bit more here. Just working on the head at the moment and feeling my way around these ladders of sunlight, which are a bit harder than I thought they were at first. You can see beautifully how much fun the effects are to put in. Play one colour against another. Some lovely pure yellows and golds going on out here in a minute because of these flowers as well, which will help because the whole thing will then link and make more sense. You can see now how even these yellows are beginning to play against the colours I've already got. Take some cobalt blue now, get back into the head with some of that. To work out just where things come. Now going back to the head again, I'm going to take a bit of my darkest blue, that's my Prussian, and a little touch of burnt sienna into that to make it warmer. Get quite a nice dark that way that I want to use. And there. So I get these feeling of these curls in the hair coming round. Now what you thought was dark before suddenly becomes or appears lighter when I actually do put a darker one colour in, like this now. Makes that makes the other tone seem quite a lot lighter, doesn't it? Not quite right there in the drawing is what I think, but I'll look at that in a moment. this stage into the painting, you can see I'm adding lemon yellow and some emerald, and it's giving me these beautiful sunlit bright greens, which I can put on at the very end here to give the highlights of the sunlight sparkling across the leaves and flowers. And what a wonderful thing to do. You know, it's the highlight of the painting for me as well, because it's so pleasurable putting in these very effective pieces of light and making the painting come to life as it is now. Because this gives it the three-dimensional quality, doesn't it, that we've been looking for. It gives her the light that she needs. And we're able to use more pure colour, whereas we've been using dulled down colour slightly until now. We're really getting the light going now. So, pure colour. And we could go even lighter yet if we wanted to, but this is enough, just gradually building it up at the moment, just working these colours up. All these lovely bits of sunlight going on behind the scenes. Sparkling through. Now take the same colour, the emerald and the lemon yellow, and this time add a little white to really go even lighter and a stage further. See up here, got a tremendous light going on around her face. And the stronger we make those colours, then the more pure and stronger we can make other colours around them, such as the pinks and the blues. Let's just take the cerulean for the minute. A little bit of those blues going up into here. We've got the flowers going on behind here that have quite strong pinks in them. You can really make the colours sing and vibrate now. We're getting into the full orchestra of the tune. We've built up all the dull background colours, and now we can really work into these lovely foreground ones.
Well, that brings us to the end of this present series of painting figures within flowers. In this last one I've shown you the whole process right the way through, but haven't gone into all of the colours because I've done that in the previous paintings. I do hope that you've enjoyed seeing this loose and lively impressionist way of working, this way of painting like a jigsaw, of building up the background colours and light and atmosphere, and then gradually over the top working the brighter colours up more and more, working from the mid-tones and then outwards into the darks and the lights. This method allows you to work on a complicated subject matter but actually achieve it quite simplistically, just by working up one colour next to another, by keeping all the colours going at once, and gradually, like a jigsaw, they'll all fit together as you see here. You are the one in charge. If you start loose, you can finish tight. You can finish as tightly as you want, as detailed as you want. You don't have to finish impressionistically like this. You can finish quite photographically if you wish to.
Start to get a much lighter pale green down here. Come back to a little bit pinker now in that centre part. I'm just going to touch a little bit of rose into there. Because we're working on a white canvas, it seems quite dark, but in fact these are very light colours that I'm using. So we continue just feathering in these colours one into another to get the effect of the clouds coming up. Having got our sky done, we can always add some more to that later. We now come down to the sea here, I think. We'll look at these turquoises. Again, we already have some cerulean mixed. Let's just check that colour against it. A little bit dark, I want it to be a bit greener. So we'll take our emerald green again, which will be coming in here. It's a little bit dark, but it always looks dark against the white when we first start off anyway. I said to you earlier, it's very difficult working on a white canvas. You can see now why in the previous painting I worked with a dark ground, because you don't have all of this problem of the white glaring through. So all the way along here, the horizon of our sea. Heat coming up in there. A little bit more purple into those there. So they're warmer still. Quite dark. And it's a very rapid way of working. And if you like this way, because you get the effect of light. All the way through here, the sunlight ripples across the water. It goes all the way through. And this needs to be a nice dark. So we'll take some Prussian blue and some burnt sienna, because that will give me a lovely deep, not a black, but either the more warm I have or the more blue I have, and the decision is as to whether it's a cooler or a warmer. More blue in that. Let's go all the way along here. Around that umbrella. More colours down there, around those, up there, right in the dark down here as well, wherever there is some. We'll cover the whole of that, and then we'll put some lights in on top, which we can do with oil paint and acrylics. With watercolour we have to paint the lights leaving the darks. Here we can put the darks and put some lights on afterwards. I'll take that now, and we'll come right the way down to the end of these trees, just flicking in with the edge of the brush, the effect of the trees coming into this. Right up through there. Swirling round. Cover this white up, let's get rid of it. Just to enjoy your painting, and I do enjoy this sort of painting. Because look at these lovely colours we can make and how quickly we can work. Put these darks against the lights here. Let that break into the sea.
Now some of these darks can be used down here again later. They will be, in fact, because in fact, when I've got it on my brush, why not use it? Some of these darks are going to be coming in as shadows. We'll paint them in even now before we paint the rest of the canvas. Backs of the figures, shadows here. Well, I've got it on my brush, let's establish it. Even on her head. Establish the darker colour of her hair now. On the side of that girl's head. Wrong side brush really, but we're just trying to flick it in just to give you the idea of how we can work these so quickly. Back of this girl's head. Be a bit neater later, but how you see the tones establishing now. Go lighter still. Take some emerald again, with a little yellow, and we'll find some of the greener greens. To play with our colours here, I'm going to make a very light orange. I'm going to take some cadmium orange, in fact, and add it with white, which will make me a very light orange. So, just test that. Yeah, that's really strong, isn't it? And I'm going to take some chrome yellow and add white and a little bit of the orange to that. That's a lovely colour. And that's more the colour I want. I will add more pure yellow to that later. Let's just get it, at the moment, let's get it covering this surface. I want to get rid of all of this white canvas as much as I can now. Really cover up this surface. Now those oranges we talked about. Let's start to bring little bits of those flecks in. Come down one stage further, take some burnt sienna and just see how dark the burnt sienna seems in the shadows of these little bits of footmarks. Hundreds of people treading over the sand during the day, and how that darkens it down yet again into a warm shadow. Brush again. Let's have a look at these here. We've got quite nice light blues to go in there, similar to the sea colour. See how the jigsaw of the painting is pulling together. So a little bit of light blue coming up into here a bit more as well, just a little bit there. So all we have to do now is keep putting the right colours in the right places, and this painting will just appear like a jigsaw. Let's look at some of the flesh tones on these figures now. I think we can get away with using quite a bit of burnt sienna for them. Maybe a bit of cadmium orange here and there. Let's have a look and see. Yeah, that's not a bad colour. We can go a bit darker and a bit warmer in places, but On the whole, I think that colour's about right. All I have to do is just try and get the drawing correct. I want this on the edge of the canvas here to help balance these central figures out, so I don't mind a figure just coming off the side of the canvas. So we gradually work our way down from the largest brushes to the smallest brushes and the details at the end on this. It's usually the case in painting. Same with watercolour, we work from the large to the small. Although sometimes with the watercolour I've been known to put the last loose washes on around the figures with a mop or even a flat. Anyway, here we go again. Here amongst the waves as well, amongst this green colour, we'll put some lemon yellow, which is a very green yellow anyway. Well, we've come to the end of this work, and it's more a matter now just pulling out some of the drawing here and there. Some cadmium orange down this arm for reflecting the light from the beach. All I need to do is just a few more little light highlights. There's a few little twinkles of very light cream pinks going on the surface here. And then I have to sign it, of course. So what should we do that in? Now, do we use a very light colour like a red, or do we use a darker, possibly even a green? Whatever we do, it has to be part of the picture, so be careful. I think a warm colour that's going to lead it forward might be a good idea. So let's take a nice red and add a bit of purple to that. Get a bit darker until we can do with that. Keep it fairly fluid. You see, it does actually fill up that corner, so it's quite an important piece of signature like this. third part of our series of beach scenes. Here we've got some nice little palms and figures sitting in the shade underneath them. So this is going to be a shadowed area, and behind the Mediterranean, the Côte d'Azur again. Now the thing with these palms is that we're going to paint in some of the mid-tones and dark tones here first, and then work the lights over the top to get the effects of these masses and masses of fronds. We'll make it look as if we've done lots and lots of work, whereas in fact we're just going to indicate them as usual, just to give an impression of them. We'll get in our mid-tones here with the sky first, and all the sky around the background, and some of the little light areas again painted afterwards. We aren't going to draw the whole thing in, I've just shown the main shapes in the drawing. So again, as normal, let's hit the sky and the light areas through the sky, then work in our mid-tones, some of the darker tones here, and gradually work up over the top with our lighter colours. In watercolour, we would be doing masking fluid for these lighter colours and the light shining through the palm trees, but in oils we'll paint the lights over the top. From the sky we'll come down to the horizon, and then the beach, and then we'll start painting in the figures in the background and finish off. Okay, so the first thing is the difference in blues on the sky here. Côte d'Azur, so we have the azure, we have the turquoises here and the ceruleans, and a much warmer pinky blue here, giving us the feeling of the warmth against the sea. So I'm going to start with a little white on my brush, and then a touch of smallest touch of cerulean, because I want it to be more pink this time, and a little touch of rose, so that it's fairly purple this time. Try that, that's better. That will do, because this warm grey will make the cool blues of the sea really sing out and give this Mediterranean light. And so I'm just working over the palm tree leaves a bit, because I know I'm going to want to work into those. And as the terps, the small amount of terps that I use in it evaporates into the air, I can work over it a bit more and just feather it in. I want to come to the bluer areas. Again, we're going to come back to our cerulean, a little touch of it in the white, and gradually go warmer as you go up. So I'll add that in there, just feathering it in amongst the background. Pick up on the pink from when you're blending the blue into it, and then bring it back up into the sky. So the cobalt blue, which is our middle strength of blue, just coming in higher up here. And that basically is our sky done. Now we need to come down to the sea. Much, much lighter, more turquoisey blue, almost into the greens. So in fact I'm going to start here with just doing that. I'm going to take some white and add a little touch of my emerald. And into that emerald just place the tiniest bit of cerulean. And you see what colour it gives us down here, this lovely turquoise green. So I'm going to work all the way along in a band into the sea behind here. And already we've got wonderful colour. Not just blue sea, but the use of real colours that are happening there. We've used the computer to enhance these colours to really bring them out. So I'll work that all the way along. I take a little more white, and into that add a little more cerulean so it becomes more blue. And we go higher up here and just feather that into the edge. And below as well we get a similar colour, but slightly, just slightly warmer. So I'm going to take a little touch of the rose into that and make that tad warmer in the foreground here. Just link it together. Now up here we've got quite a strong blue, so I'm going to take a smaller brush because our areas are getting quite small now, and we need the cobalt up there again. A little 1/4 inch for this job. So I'm going to take my cobalt
even a little touch of ultramarine. Tad more white in there. Through the tree then, doesn't matter though. I'm going to bring some of the green back into that colour with a bit more white, just to link it here. A little greener down that bit. The distant islands there, which are a purpley colour. I said we made that earlier, so we should still have it here to use. This should be it. Let's see what we've got. Yes, that's it. It's slightly lighter. There's a slight bit of hazy atmosphere coming in between the mountain and the sea. So I shall come back, the island and the sea, I shall come back with a little bit of a fine brush and a little bit of a light pinky blue in a minute, and just lighten in between the island and the sea. Okay, that gives us our distance. If there's a hard edge, you can just use your finger to soften it a fraction if you like that. And again, it looks strong because of the white canvas, but it won't be once we've got the darks on. Okay, we're going to go to a larger brush again and come back to painting in the palm tree leaves now. So we'll start with our midtones. In this case, we've got some quite warm greens. So I'm going to take some yellow ochre, just plonk some of that straight on just to feel some of the warmer colours that are happening through the palm leaves here. For instance there. Before I really get into using other greens, this yellow can just glow through here. And some bits down here which are lighter as well. So a little bit of neat yellow ochre there, these palms. Then I'm going to mix some cobalt with that yellow ochre, which will give me a nice warm green, but a fairly dead green. But that's what I want for this job here at the moment. There we go. So you see how much darker that is. Now, I'm not going to try and paint a lot of detail, I'm just going to feather that out with the brush. Just use the tip of the brush to feather it out as if there are some palm fronds there already. Giving me my mid-tones. We're going to go darker and darker into this, and at the very end we're going to come back with some of our lights and just flick them in over the top surfaces, again to get the feeling of masses of detail, even if it's not actually being painted in with a single brush. Just work on this area over here of the jetty there, which is going to be cream, a little bit of white into it later. And a small brush, all pointy round. And again, we're going to take the same colour, that ultramarine and burnt sienna, to give me the real darks back there.
Plenty of taps in that to get a nice fluid mark. And we'll just see about painting in some of these in more detail. Let's see how these layers are building up now. Did a painting like this similarly for you in the oil painting video of the bush in New Zealand, which came out very well. Back to a smaller brush, back to a flat again, and we'll work backwards and forwards across this now. We've got our sort of green background there. Let's now add a bit of burnt sienna to the Prussian and make it a bit warmer, a bit browner, and we'll come down using the brush across like this, look, to get the feeling of these palm tree, pineapple-y surfaces where the leaves have been cut off over years past and it's grown up. Just twisting the brush down and round, leaving the light areas showing through in this case, even on somebody's swimming costume. There's no point in hanging back. If the colour's there, put it in now. Wherever that dark colour is, if you've got it on your brush, use it. Start to look at the seeds, the oil seeds of the palms. Okay, we've got the blues showing through. Now we need to make some very light greens. So I'm going to take my lemon yellow and you need some clean taps for this now as well, and some white and a little touch of emerald, which will give me a very light cream, quite an acidic green, much cooler green than the rest, which again is going to help with the sunlight effects. As you can see from this now, these warm colours are making such a difference through here, as the hottest part of the sun just comes through in places. But this area of sand here, what colour can it be? It's not. It's a fairly warm cream, so I think we'll mix up some white and some chrome and a little cadmium orange. And how bright is that? That's not far off. Let's work in these basic shapes, and I'm going to come back and put in the stripes of the palm tree leaves across these areas as they are. These lovely, I'm using cadmium orange and cadmium yellow at the moment to really enjoy these sunlit areas that are coming in between the leaves of the well, I think at this stage we're about ready to have a go at the figures now. So the idea before that is just flick in these background umbrellas. Let the sunlight catch some of the pure white on the edges. We've got plenty of room left on the film. This will be my penultimate painting now then, using the enhanced photographs from the PC to paint some bright Provence beaches. So I'm going to do this last one because it's such a nice and unusual composition, and then we'll do just two children shrimping on the beach, just to narrow down on a smaller painting and show we can do just painting whole figures but with this very loose technique. Okay, we'll start off with the sky as usual. Take a nice 1/2 inch flat. And again we want fairly mauve colours here to play against the yellows. To make it a more bluey grey. Look at the difference we get there. Now we have to get a nice cerulean blue going with some white. I may even have to add a little touch of some lemon yellow into this to make it a bit lighter still. Bring some of the same colour down into this. If you were a pointillist you could use a smaller brush, but I can just use the tip of this brush to tickle things in. And again it's quite different to the previous painting, although we've got some similar colours going on, and we've certainly got similarities in the way that we want to use the purples and the blues against the turquoises later to really make everything stand out, the bright umbrellas and everything, to give the feeling of heat, in other words. And while I'm at this I'm going to paint in one basic colour for the umbrella as well. As I keep saying, when you've got a colour on your brush, if it's the right one to use somewhere else, use it up, don't mix some more later. Continue painting the colour that you've got wherever it is. And always I know it amazes some of you to see how fast I work, but just look at the speed we can paint at. And a little emerald green. Before I do that, let's just check where else it might be. Before I carry on mixing the colour, I've got the right colour green to go in on some of this toweling here, so again I will do it while it's there, while I've got the colour mixed. No point in having to mix it all over again. already establishing our lights and darks even at this stage. The green in the background, again, we're going to use the light colour first, which is going to be the emerald. And I'm going to put a little bit of yellow ochre with that, just to deaden it down a fraction. Like as I say, if you see green elsewhere, we'll put it in. May even need a touch of burnt sienna to make it even warmer, just a little touch, not too much, be careful. There we go, that's nice. A little bit of cobalt pure here and there into this too. This is our mid blue, the cobalt, our slightly cooler blue than the ultramarine. Ultramarines and cobalts to play with. There we go. I'm going to just thin down some tabs and block out these white areas a moment before I put on the reds there, just in case I don't want any white showing through. I'm going to paint orange in that one first. Got a reason for that. That is that I'm going to darken it down afterwards. I'm going to put this orange on first and then afterwards come in with cadmium red on top to let the orange glow through. Oh, I'd love to be actually doing this out there on the spot, eh? Once I've got this orange on my brush, let's look where else it might be, like up here for instance. Just paint it straight in the right place. Just little bits of colour and white here and there to again give the illusion of the boats. We can do this sort of detail at any time, but I'm just putting a bit in now because I just feel like doing it, and if I feel like doing it, it's my painting, why not? So we take the fine brush now and make it into a blade so we can flick in these masks just with a single downward stroke like that. Next we're going to go for the sand, and similar to our last mixture of white and chrome and a little bit of cadmium orange. And now we'll use some cadmium orange and white to give the vibrance to this sand, having used the chrome yellow and white as a base again. And we'll put a little bit more pink into this in a moment as well, just to give it a bit more life again. We've worked on this little bundle of figures, now I've got to carry on up here. At the moment I'm using my burnt sienna and rose and a little bit of the ultramarine to give me the depths of the blues and some of the shadows, and Prussian blue and burnt sienna into the shadows. These figures now, we'll do the figures in the distance here first. Let that leg go down and out a bit. And this one comes forward. I'll put some shadow in there in a minute. We'll do some more shadow on again in a moment with the sienna. Girl's shoulder here. And sunlight catching him across the shoulder there, very important. A little bit on this woman too, I keep calling her a guy. Now this one is awkward because we could either sign here or here. I think we probably will sign here because of the flow around to there. But to balance it, what I'm going to do is just add a little from all the darks, just one or two little bits here and there, just to draw the eye in and forward. If there's a few pebbles or cigarette ends just here. Here. What should we use? I think probably the purple, because again it'll draw the eye forward. There we go. And maybe a little flourish underneath this one. Okay, now for our final painting. This is quite a small one, and we're going to do these two little figures, the boy and the girl, which I did at Le Pradette. It's a photograph that was taken whilst I was doing the on plein air painting earlier, and I thought it'd be rather nice to just enlarge them, and we're going to put it under glass, this oil. We've got a little frame we're going to use, and it's actually going to go under glass. Oils under glass are rather Victorian things. You don't have to have them under glass, of course. You can just have them with, just varnish them. This is on hardboard, and I've primed the hardboard. All the rest have been on canvas. So we're going to paint the background first and then work the figures up as usual. Okay, this area we have to look at the base colour. I'm going to put a light turquoise green through here, and then work through my greys and blue greys, and then work the darker greys over the top afterwards. This area is white on the picture anyway, but I shall put that in afterwards with impasto white, so heavy white. Let's start on this bit first here. And as we're painting with fairly small painting, we want to be painting with fairly small brushes. I'm going to start off with a round nylon on this one at first, number 4. I'll mix up this colour here. So the turquoise for that now. I think some emerald green and a little touch of blue should give us the colour I want there. So we've got some green going. Let's have a look at that first. Yes, that's quite a nice green. Of course, nice smooth hardboard, very different to painting on the canvas that I was doing earlier. This is a much different effect. But we're still going to paint fairly loosely. As I said earlier on, it's very important that your drawing is good. It doesn't matter how loosely you paint afterwards, but the drawing you start off with must be a good drawing. Because if you start off with a bad drawing, it's very hard to pull it together with the painting. Put a bit more green, light green into that. There's quite a lot. This hardboard's quite absorbent, and one of the nice things about it is that you can paint fairly quickly because it actually sucks the paint onto the surface. Now I need to go to my cerulean. Which is quite light this time. Yeah, that's not bad. A little bit lighter still, I think. It's always difficult to tell when you're painting on white board because obviously the white makes it look a lot lighter than it actually is. So I'm going to paint this all over. Quite rapid on small work like this. Makes you wonder if you were using a compatible size brush for a bigger painting. You know, if I had a 1 metre canvas here and I had a 10-inch house paintbrush, it'd be good fun to paint with in the same way as I'm painting small scale with this number 10. And we have to come back to these blue greys in a moment. We do want a little bit of the cobalt coming into it now. And we just use the tip of the brush to get the feeling of these ripples and waves. Not far off. A little touch of purple and some yellow ochre to give me a browny grey, which is going on back into here. Some unusual colours, and this is what the computer brings out. It helps me to see other colours that I wouldn't even normally see, and then once you've got those in your head and you want to go back and paint the sea later, you find that a lot of these colours remain with you and you think, oh yes, I can see that now. I'm going to need quite a lot of that grey, so I better start mixing up. Some purple, some blue, cerulean blue, some white and a little yellow ochre will give me the grey that I want. Well, I've got it on my brush, that blue's coming through here.
I'm going to paint right across where the white surf's coming. I'm going to put that white surf back in again over the top in impasto. Just lather it on with this brush in a minute. Now I need to make some of these lighter colours that are happening as the water comes up here, but before I do that, let's do what I said I was going to do just now and take the white and impasto it onto here to make this wave coming through. So a heavily painted, nice thick white paint coming through here. Interesting way to paint, isn't it? Nice free, loose way to paint. Working loosely and gradually tightening up. I want a little bit of cream in that. Need a bit more colour. Not happy with just what the photograph's done. I take it one stage further. If I want some colour, I put it in. It's my choice. And actually start to paint some of the details in at last. There we go. And now I'm going to start to need, I think, my finer brushes. So I'm going to come down, maybe able to finish with a round pointed. You see how dark that now looks. I'll work some lighter over that in a moment. Now I want to come to one colour and paint the whole figures in a flesh tone. A cool mauve, I think, with a little touch of yellow ochre. Should give me that wonderful warm. That's it. There we go. Let's bring that down. We can soften that a bit more later. I just want a little more yellow ochre in that, just to deaden it down a bit more. We'll give her a lovely warmth against the sea, the flesh tones. Later with some finer work. Now the boy. Yeah. If that's the trousers there, then maybe I made him too long. There. trousers finish there, that's it. And just by painting these darks in, we're helping to form the figure. Let's see if we can paint the brush, the net stick in fairly carefully. And that comes right up behind. And actually off the picture, which is quite fun. And hers as well. Comes out from behind her here, right up back to there. There we go. Now we need a lighter line on there, with some very light cadmium orange and white. That wasn't clean enough, so I've got to do it again. In fact, I'm not even certain, I think I might have a bit of yellow on that because it really is a very light colour. Yes, a bit of chrome yellow. Touch of cadmium yellow, and let's see if we can just put that highlight along the sunlight along the top of that. That handle. There we go. Comes through there and continues on right down here. And you see how these things suddenly and wonderfully appear for us. Now, very light mauve. So a little touch of mauve and plenty of white. Let's see if we can get some of the colours of this net going here. Rid of this white board as soon as we can. Nice light line on top there, almost white. Just catching the wet net. Same here. And finally we just sign it. Painting under glass. Maybe want to just lighten that frame a little bit, it's rather too bright, but that's the effect we wanted. Well, that's the end of our film Painting in Provence, and I've given you a good one for your money, I think, painting on plein air and painting in the studios, and a whole series, a whole plethora of different beach scenes, plus a vineyard one. Do hope you've enjoyed it, and look forward to seeing you watching my other videos. To add to our different subjects and ways of painting, let's have a go at a series of portraits now. And as always, a different subject can be treated in many different ways with different materials, mediums and methods. In this case I'm going to use oils, and I've primed the smooth side of a sheet of hardboard with some yellow ochre and raw umber to make a nice brown base. Then we can paint the oils over acrylics. Remember, we can always paint oils over acrylics, never acrylics over oils. Normally it's a good recipe to start with your largest brushes first and finish with your smallest. In this case I'm going to start with a roller. I'm going to start with a specially made oil painting roller or acrylics roller in sponge, mix up the paint with a palette knife or a painting knife first, and then roll the background paint onto my board. Oil paint can be applied with loads of different ways. There's no need to just use a brush. We can use a painting knife, we can use a rag, we can use our fingers, we can use a roller, we can use all sorts of things that will give us these special effects and textures that we want. Especially when we want to cover a large area like this one. You see here I can even blend one colour over another. So first of all we can work up the paint with the roller, then I can mix more colours and roll them over one another, actually mixing them and blending them onto the board as well. You can even do the figures or parts of the figures with them. I can immediately use the chemistry of paint here by using the opposites in the colour circle. So I'm going to mix some lemon yellow and white first of all to make a cream, and then add some little emerald green to it to make it a greener, a lighter greeny yellow, which will work well against the flesh tones, the burnt siennas and the burnt umbers that I'm going to use. Let me give you the palette that I'm going to work with here. In this case I'm going to have lemon yellow, some chrome yellow or cadmium yellow would do. I'm going to need yellow ochre, and I'm going to have some permanent rose or rose. Then we're going to have cadmium red, and after the cadmium red the lightest of our blues, the coolest, the cerulean blue, and then some cobalt blue, and then we go on to the ultramarine blue, which is one of the most beautiful and strongest of our blues, and finally for my very dark colours we'll need Prussian blue. This isn't black, this is a very dark Prussian blue, and then burnt sienna, and then burnt umber. And to make a green we've already got our lemon yellow and cerulean, so we can make a nice green with that if we require it. And of course we need some white. In this case it's titanium white. As I'm going to use the sponge roller for the large areas and background, I shan't need very large brushes. In fact for this a 3/4 inch would be the maximum. I'm going to use a range of long-handled synthetic sable oval flats for this. I like the long handle because I can reach out for them. And I'll work from 1/2 inch down to a fine point, a 1/8, and also have a final narrow round brush, a number 1, just to finish off fine details. Then finally, as you see here, I have my painting knife.
technique for this is to paint fat over lean. That means to paint the thin paint on first, which soaks into the board fairly quickly because the hard board is fairly absorbent. MDF is the same. And then to work paint over the top of that, getting thicker and thicker as I go along. I usually, and I'm doing so in this case, work from my medium tones outwards to my lights and darks, usually doing the darkest areas and highlights at the very end, certainly the details at the end. We start loose and we finish as tight as we want. Okay, let's just watch the creation of this painting in high speed and how it develops. When we come to the portrait, we don't change the method or technique. We still work very loosely, painting the right colours in the right tones in the right shapes in the right places, gradually working it up, tightening it up, getting into more and more detail. If you paint differently in an area of a painting, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. In some instances that can be quite useful, but in this case I want the whole painting to be coherent, to hold together as one style. Even the details are built up loosely. The patterns on the dress, the hair, the eyebrows, the eyes, everything is built up bit by bit in larger areas, gradually getting finer and finer and smaller and tightening up the details. You don't have to paint every strand of hair, just to paint the areas and blocks and tones of hair and then give an indication of smaller areas of reflections of the finer hairs catching the highlights and so on. That will do us. You don't have to paint all the little hairs in strand by strand, that's ridiculous. So in other words, we're still working in a fairly impressionist and loose way, not a photorealist way. I'm not against photorealism, but why are we painting? I mean, if it's just to be a technical accomplishment, if it's just to do something like a photograph, well, just copy the photograph, fine, or just make another photograph. A painting is about paint, it's about emotion, it's about so many more things than just a copy of a photograph. It's to take it further. And we're going to use that paint to enjoy it. In this case we're painting in a fairly slab-like way of areas of colour and paint compared one to another. And so we come now to the final detail, where we will really tighten up this painting, make sure the features are as correct as we want, make sure we get those little smiles and quirky pieces of the faces that make that person who they are. Those little strokes just here and there on a face or in a wrinkle or in a smile line can just make that person come to life. The twinkle in an eye, the slight movement of the lips, and so on. But right to the very end we're still going to paint with little touches of paint, with little strokes and little spaces and areas. It's simply that they've got smaller and smaller. So the painting has been kept loose all the way through, getting as tight as I want it, and I'm the one who's always been in control.